Hey everyone, Carolina Weather Authority meteorologist Joshua Nagelberg, and it's hard to believe that we are already 1 month down in summer and 2 to go. I mean, this year's been crazy for sure. And I'm not talking about the news out there, I'm just talking about the weather department. We have seen in June, it was a little on the cool side for much of the month, and then temperatures kind of recovered a little bit here. It's now finally feeling like it should, I would say, with no cold fronts in the near future here. We just don't get them this time of the year. The tropics started off like insanely busy and have kind of settled down a little bit, and that's really not too unusual either. But let's take a look at July, guys, because we need to know what's going on here during the heat of summer. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm looking at. And before we get to the charts, too, if you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to our webpage here at carolinawxauthority.com for more detailed articles. I did have YouTube up, and well, there it is. I was watching Mike's video from a couple weeks ago, but feel free to subscribe to us right here. And let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on. The Atlantic is quiet now. We did have a couple of yellow areas that have just kind of gone by the wayside. But let's take a look right now at our ensemble forecast for the longer term. And currently the weather chart shows at 18,000 feet, a big trough in the west, cutoff low across New England, and what's trying to be a high pressure building over central Canada. So it's very ample. We're seeing a lot of extremes between some snow, believe it or not, across the northern Rockies earlier this week, to some severe weather here in between everything across the Dakotas, to some heat over central Canada, and then some wet, cooler weather across New England, and we're kind of in between the mix here in the Carolinas. Not too hot, not too cold, with our share of showers and storms as disturbances drop southeast. Now we're going to look into July, into our crystal ball here, and we see the trough in the northwest start to, not weaken, but lift northward a little bit, and we see our cutoff low in New England start to lift out by the end of the week. And that's a good thing, because if that had dropped farther southwest like it looked like it could have, we'd be in for some miserable weather like we've seen a lot of May and June, believe it or not. So heading into the end of the month here, we're not just piping hot. We don't have a massive area of high pressure like the plains does. We actually have maybe a little piece of energy which is going to get stuck underneath. Not really a cutoff, but kind of an upper level weakness. And what that's going to do is draw Gulf of Mexico moisture across the southern United States. Now, how far north this gets may determine how wet our weekend ends up, especially Sunday. Friday and Saturday may not be all that bad, to be honest with you guys. We called for some light showers in the area, maybe some pop-up storms in the mountains. But if low pressure forms here, that could take a lot of the moisture away from us, and we may actually end up with a decent start to next week. But the northern extent of that too, and it's tough to say where that's going to end up being, because notice it doesn't move a whole lot, it doesn't budge. This is Sunday and Monday, and here we go, we got some southwesterly flow aloft. So whatever forms down in here is eventually going to get drawn back up the coast. Do I think something tropical forms? I don't think we're really going to see Edward. We could see a non-tropical low at this point. But if this were to drop a little farther south, then, I'd be a little more concerned about something forming in close here to northeast Florida. And that wouldn't be a surprise to any of us in the northern Gulf or even off the southeast coast. We've seen some in-close development before. So something to watch for you guys. But I think the main thing I want to draw your attention to is that the weather pattern becomes a lot more what we call east to west or west-east zonal. The big ridge of high pressure is in the southwest, finally. They had such a cool start or end to June, and now it's warming up back here. The trough lifts out of New England, and we try to bring high pressure in, but it just doesn't quite get here. We're still stuck with these little pieces of scattered milk, I call it. No, but just, head scratchers where, it gets typically hot and humid, but then we'd have the instability for showers and storms basically on a daily basis. Now, by the end of next week, around the 10th, we do start to maybe heat up a little bit. Maybe we finally get some mid-90s showing up here. Look at this region of high pressure. It's starting to expand. We're starting to see, what could be, actually, if I go back a little bit here, could be a lot of severe weather episodes over the northern United States by next weekend. And in fact, maybe a derecho. I mean, look at this kind of wind speed aloft at 500 millibars. It's pretty intense. The Great Lakes and northern parts of the U.S. could have a derecho at some point here. But I don't think that's going to make it all the way down here, not with high pressure over us. So the first half of July, does stay kind of active, but we may end up getting a couple days of relief in here early next week. Precipitation over the next week, like I mentioned here, things are going to drop southeast and it could end up staying a bit wet, especially to our west. And it's not really until maybe the beginning of the following week that we start to see some relief from that wetness, and the climate forecast system is going a little bit dry. But then as we head later into the month, the tropics start to come to life, and it's tough to say if we're dry or wet. We may just kind of end up near average. That is possible. Or we could see a trend towards very wet toward the end of the month. So something to keep an eye on there. Temperatures over the next week, most of the eastern U.S. is warm once this upper low lifts out of the area, but notice we don't really get that warm here because of that stuck upper low in here. So the heat that's in Florida and the heat that's in Texas just never can really expand eastward all the way to us. Next week it does get a little warmer, but it may take a little time to do that. And really, we're not seeing any extremes here. We do see a couple hot days. We don't see anything really cool at this point, but it will certainly be humid. And the heat does carry on to about the 20th of July and then breaks by the end of the month as we get into maybe a more unsettled pattern, and maybe the tropics start picking up as well at that point. The sea surface temperatures do warm for July. We've already seen them warm off the coast very quickly after a cool, wet start to June. And if you're heading to the beaches in July, be prepared for typically warm weather and certainly warmer water than what we've had if you went maybe a couple weeks ago, as that sun is shining pretty well despite these thunderstorms, and that looks to continue to be the trend. You know, I'd love to say that we've got some cooler water coming down this way, and it does maybe try to cool off in this zone, but the Gulf Stream, the areas near the southeast are definitely trending warmer, and that goes hand in hand with our tropical forecast, that it's going to turn pretty active. And finally, let's take a look at the climate forecast system in the longer range. This is at 18,000 feet. And all you need to know here is that brighter colors indicate warmer than average air aloft at 500 millibars, which is 18,000 feet. Stronger high pressure than average. And the blues indicate lower pressure and cooler weather aloft. So we like to look at where high pressure systems are and where the heat is expanding. And it looks like for the end of the month, that is central Canada. And then as we head into, actually that's the middle of July, so we'll start here. Yeah, there's the heat. Oh man, look at that. And then, you know, the heat does cut down a little bit here as our flow becomes a little more zonal, but high pressure does build into the southeast, and this is the beginning of our Bermuda Ridge by July 14th. And then that tries to break up a little bit as a trough hooks up just offshore. And then here we go to the end of July, and here's where our Bermuda Ridge is starting to kind of take shape. And we're looking for a weakness in here to draw storms in our direction. As we get into the end of July and the beginning of August, tropical systems are more likely going to be coming across, and when they get into this region, we've got to watch and see where they get steered. A weakness will tend to maybe draw storms into its direction. So what this could mean is that we may have something coming up into the Gulf that could be an issue, or we could have something off the southeast coast. I mean, this could end up here, could end up here. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty, and trying to pin down a potential tropical system 5 weeks out is next to impossible. But I will say I've seen signals that point to it becoming more likely. So that's something you just got to be ready for, guys. So I appreciate your time today, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, safe 4th of July holiday, and we'll catch you soon.